Turn off the power, not the thoughts. What if many of the problems we've struggled with for so long are, in fact, a misunderstanding? What if the negative thoughts and emotions that have tormented us are not something we intentionally create, but simply the automatic replay of a broken recording device? If that's the case, then we don't need to wrestle with the recording or argue with it. We only need to cut the power, or at least turn it down. This metaphor is not merely symbolic. Modern neuroscience increasingly shows that repetitive thoughts and emotions are not failures of will or character, but automatic firings of specific neural connection patterns. The brain is extremely efficient at reusing circuits that have been activated frequently. When negative thoughts keep returning, it's not because they are necessary or true, but because those circuits have already hardened. Like a damaged turntable connected to electricity, it keeps spinning and producing noise as long as power is supplied. The key point is that this process is largely mechanical. We fail to stop our thoughts not because our willpower is weak, but because already wired circuits continue to operate while receiving sufficient energy. Telling yourself, "Don't think about it," is no different from asking a running machine to please stop making noise. So what, then, is the power supply for thought? Quite simply, energy for the brain. Medically speaking, the brain accounts for only about 2% of body weight, yet it consumes roughly 20% of total energy even at rest. Its preferred fuel source is glucose, derived from carbohydrates. While the brain can also use ketone bodies produced from fat, under a typical diet glucose is the fastest and most readily available fuel. As carbohydrate intake increases, especially when blood sugar rises frequently, the overall level of brain activity also increases. This includes not only problem solving and focus, but also unnecessary, repetitive thoughts and emotional reactions. Having many thoughts does not always mean deep thinking. Sometimes it is nothing more than mental noise produced by excess energy. From this perspective, the composition and timing of meals genuinely affect both the quantity and quality of our thoughts. Numerous studies have linked excessive intake of refined carbohydrates and large blood sugar fluctuations with anxiety, restlessness, and emotional instability. In contrast, diets centered on protein, fiber, and healthy fats tend to stabilize blood sugar and reduce overexcitation of the nervous system. For this reason, a pattern of eating vegetables, low-sugar fruits, nuts, protein, and small amounts of fat during the morning and daytime, while limiting carbohydrates mainly to the evening, can reduce the immediate glucose supply to the brain. This approach does not suppress thinking by force. Instead, it weakens the conditions that amplify excessive thought in the first place. When this is combined with an early sleep schedule, the effect becomes clearer. If you consume only about half your usual carbohydrate intake at dinner, blood sugar rises modestly later in the evening, and the brain naturally shifts into a different mode. If you also go to bed early, around 9 p.m., that energy is used primarily for dreaming and memory consolidation, rather than fueling unnecessary mental chatter during waking hours. In the early stages of sleep, emotional processing and memory integration are highly active. And this process is far less painful than being trapped in repetitive thinking while awake. Seen this way, reducing unnecessary thoughts is not a matter of mental discipline, but of system design. There is no need to persuade the brain. The brain responds not to logic, but to conditions. When energy input decreases, neural firing patterns naturally quiet down. Negative thought circuits, when not repeatedly used, gradually weaken. This is the basic principle of neuroplasticity. Of course, this approach is not a universal solution. Individual health conditions, metabolic differences, and underlying illnesses can lead to different outcomes when adjusting diet. Still, the core insight remains important. Repetitive, unwanted thoughts and emotions are not who you are. They are biological phenomena that arise under certain conditions. The moment we truly understand this, life becomes much easier to manage. There is no longer a need to fight with our thoughts. Excessive thinking is not an enemy to defeat, but a device that turns on only when too much energy is supplied. Choosing to limit bread, cakes, rice, noodles, and sugary foods during the morning and daytime is, quite simply, a way of reducing excess power to the brain. Deciding how to manage that power, that awareness alone, can bring a deep sense of mental calm.